In a big win for truck drivers, the USDOT announcing 9 initiatives aimed at making life easier for you. OOIDA led the push, but we're just getting started. Executive Vice President Lewie Pugh walks us through what comes next.
And happy Canada Day to our friends to the north. We catch up with a Canadian OOIDA board member and the Canadian Trucking Alliance to see how things are going on today's Trucking with OOIDA.
Welcome to the show. Scott Thompson here.
Ashley Blackford here.
We are joined by a special guest. He was here just a couple weeks ago. We decided to let him back in the building. Lewie Pugh, Executive Vice President of OOIDA. How are we doing?
Hey, thanks for having me since it's National Canada Day.
Yeah, happy Canada Day.
That's the only Canadian word I know is hey.
Hey. Get some poutine. Yeah, we'll go through all the stuff here throughout the show. We do have an important thing to talk about, Lewie, and that's why we brought you on here. Late last week, the USDOT, again, announcing 9 initiatives aimed at improving the trucking profession, and all 9 are things that OOIDA has been advocating for years, if not decades in some cases here. Let's talk about this a little bit. We're going to go through each of the initiatives one by one, kind of talk about them and what it means and what we can expect next. But this is a big win for the association, no doubt, but more importantly, a big win for truck drivers out there.
100%. Of course, big win for OOIDA is always a big win for truck drivers. That's what we're here for. That's what we were founded for. And you're right, for decades, I mean, some of these things, the parking thing was the first thing I ever went to Washington, D.C. for, and that was in like 2006.
Yeah.
I was a trucker. So, yeah, and OOIDA was fighting that stuff before that. So, yeah, I think this is fantastic. What great news last Friday when this came out.
Yeah.
It's just been fabulous, and it makes us feel good. Members seem to have really taken it. Our board's taking it, liking it, and loving it. So that's good, Let's hope we follow through with this and continue. But hats off to the administration and Secretary Duffy for listening. We met with him, a month or so ago down in Texas.
Yep.
And Todd Spencer, our president, had a nice long talk with Secretary Duffy, and it looks like that went a long ways, and so we appreciate it.
And he made that clear, too. I know when you talked to him, and I think when I talked to him as well, the Secretary did, that they want to be hearing from truck drivers, specifically truck drivers, about what they're seeing out there, what they're dealing with. And this really does speak to the fact that you pointed out they're listening and actually doing some stuff here and not just listening, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I say this all the time. I've said this on this show and every show I go on. You've got to reach out to your lawmakers. You've got to file comments. You have to talk to these people. And if you don't do that, nobody's ever going to listen to you. If all you do is get on social media and complain and gripe about stuff, that doesn't go nowhere. That's why, we have this great thing, Fighting for Truckers. You know me, the plug guy, fightingfortruckers.com.
Yep.
Go on there, file your comments, reach out to your lawmakers, because you can do that faster than what you can do putting a post on social media complaining about where nobody cares or is going to do anything about it.
Digging into each of these initiatives, starting with truck parking, the DOT is advancing more than $275 million in funding to expand truck parking availability. How good is that? How much is that going to do?
Well, it'll do a lot more what it did before we had, right? Before we had nothing. Of course, expanding truck parking capacity is a huge thing. It's a huge thing to OOIDA and our members. It's, we have a bill in Congress right now for $775 million. So you put that with that'd be $1 billion. That's going to build a lot of truck parking spaces. Unfortunately, some places are much more expensive than others to build and what they have to go through. But every bit helps here, and this is a huge problem that for far too long the government and folks have just completely ignored, and now it's at crisis level. So good for them to realize that. I think they need to be creative too, because not only do we already have this money and they're going to expand, but there's also places out there where FMCSA and local municipalities and stuff could probably look into that. They already have land or they already have pavement there. It's just a matter of utilizing that pavement. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago at the Eastern Transportation Coalition, a guy from New York, and that's what he was saying. He's a highway engineer. He's like, we've got a lot of ground here in New York. It's already paved.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of opening up and using it. And states need to be thinking about that as well, because it's going to take a lot of money like we're getting here, but it's going to take a lot of other things and thinking outside of the box. I mean, the one thing I always say is sports stadiums.
Yeah.
The county, the city, somebody owns that. The government owns those. People pay for them. Most of the time, they just sit there
In
empty.
the off season, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You know, there's a lot, and usually they're in urban areas where truckers don't have much choice.
Right
of
off the
anything.
highway.
Right off a highway.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, some more out of the box thinking. But again, hats off to them for taking this commitment, getting these funds out there, and committing to help this situation.
That's my question too, because we're talking $275 million for truck parking, and you know they're tapping into grants for that. Some of that money I think was already there to begin with, but you know, $180 million of that total is going to Florida for I think more than 900 new truck parking spaces along the I-4 corridor. I guess the question moving forward here is, this is a great first step in opening that funding up, and you talked about the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act and the good that it would do. In terms of what the USDOT and FMCSA can do on this front, this really should be looked at, hopefully, as a first steps. I would hope that there would be more of these coming down the line, that they're going to do more of this.
Yeah, and of course they still got some money left out of these grants here, so they've definitely got more money. We saw last year before they did something in South Dakota.
Right.
And there's been a couple other places that they've done this. So yeah, I'm with you. This is a good first step, and more to come. And I think they have the money, some money there, and let's hope. I mean, I say this all the time. FMCSA doesn't have any problem handing out money to cops to give truckers tickets for either being illegally parked or driving over their hours of service. So I'm hoping that we're taking some of that money and shifting toward truckers. Not that enforcement's not important at times,
Right.
but you know, it's pretty hard. And I mean, enforcement wrestles with this, and I've talked to them. They don't want to write somebody a ticket for taking a break if they're in a legal space or something. Or you know, or they a little over on their hours, but sometimes they're forced to do what they have to do.
Yeah. That obviously welcomed by the truck driving community, the idea of creating more truck parking spaces out there. This other one, and this is a short one, but really a sweet one, and we knew this was coming, really, saying goodbye to the speed limiter mandate. Obviously, the previous administration, and we've seen other administrations kind of push this forward. The Trump administration has said, we're not going to do it. Not really a surprise, but we knew it was coming, but again, another welcome piece of news.
Well, we thought it was coming. Maybe we shouldn't say new, but we thought it was coming.
Well,
but yes.
yeah.
But I'll give you that. And yeah, goodbye, sayonara, see you later, baby. Now, what we need to do as truckers is go to fightingfortruckers.com, send your lawmakers some comments on the Drive Act to put the final nail in the coffin.
Right, because they can bring it back at some point.
Because our lovely friends over at the American Trucking Association or some of the safety groups out there, you know, when they get a new administration, we get new people, there's a good chance that they could bring this back to FMCSA.
Right.
So what we need to do is get that bill passed and put the final nail in the speed limiter coffin. Truckers all out there agree. This is crazy. This has nothing to do with safety. This isn't driven by anything but keeping labors down, trying to take away the competitive edge of some trucking companies over others, or to make people feel good. And really what it'll cause is more carnage and death on the highway, and anybody with common sense knows that. Yeah. So let's put the final nail in the coffin. But thank you to the administration. It's Secretary Duffy again for getting rid of this for now.
Yeah, and that those bills are in both chambers of Congress, would essentially prohibit FMCSA from ever in the future pushing this.
Then it would take an act of Congress to change it.
Right, exactly.
Hours of service flexibility, pilot programs were announced. How is this going to work?
Well, with pilot programs, usually they pick a certain amount of people. You know, I urge people, if you can have the ability and you can, do it. I mean, there'll be some parameters laid out there. There'll probably be some reporting that has to be done. But, you know, the whole split sleeper berth thing, especially for teams, the 5 and 5 and 6 and 4, I think that's welcome. You know, that was the norm forever and for trucking. And then after the new hours of service change, it got changed a cut out of there. So good for them for recognizing this and letting people to have a little more flexibility in their time. As far as the 3-hour extension for truckers, when I first talked to FMCSA, I heard about this, my first concern is because, one, truckers can take this as they want to take a shower, to get something to eat, take a nap, wait on traffic, which I think that's all fantastic. Drivers need that ability to stop that 14-hour clock for a couple hours to let something happen. My concern, though, is they're also going to let them use it as shippers and receivers if they're detained. And the thing I said is you better be careful with this because shippers, receivers, or even some unscrupulous motor carriers out there will force drivers
take advantage of it.
To take advantage of this. And of course, truckers don't get paid.
Right.
And I said, which I know FMCSA doesn't really have any oversight over this, but, one thing you can do is try to push this over, help tell the administration, the secretary, they need to get this Got Trucker Act up there and passed so truckers can get overtime. But the other thing, I reminded them is just that's probably a pushback you're going to hear from truckers, or they're afraid that this is going to be. So that plays into the whole NCCDB thing, which I know we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But you need a place for these truckers to report that. But they understand that. They know that's probably going to happen. So good for them for knowing that. Again, these pilot programs are used to gather data and hopefully change the rules for the better. So that's one thing they're looking at from truckers is to gain that data of shippers or receivers or unscrupulous motor carriers taking advantage of truckers like this and making them use that 3 hours for stuff like that they don't get compensated for.
When we talk about these pilot programs too, essentially, I don't think we know the details of how it's going to look and who's going to be involved and whatnot. That's going to come, I guess, in the weeks to come here. But when they do these pilot programs, essentially they're going to be looking at kind of, flexing these things and giving more flexibility to the people in the pilot program. And the idea, I think, is that if they find out that relaxing those requirements does not impact safety in a negative way, that maybe we'll see some more flexibility kind of carried on down the line for everybody. You have been around the block a time or two. You know how this goes. What do you think they're going to find out when they, allow these people to kind of be a little more flexible in what they're doing?
Well, I'd like to think they're going to find out that they will be less accidents. And, this is things that truckers have asked for forever. And we say this all the time. I say it. We say it here at OOIDA. If you want to make the roads safer, listen to the men and women behind the wheel. Those are the people that are number one care about safety because it's their office. So I think most truckers believe that putting this back into the truckers' hand, allow them the choice to wait. I mean, I know myself. I don't want to be forced to drive through heavy traffic. I don't want to go through Washington, D.C. at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or Philadelphia or Chicago or any other major metro. I don't want to go through Kansas City.
Yeah.
So let me pull over, take a couple-hour nap, and roll on. What's safer? Congestion. The more congestion you have, the more likely you are to get in an accident. So, putting that on, or sometimes you just get tired. And we've seen, unfortunately, in this office, we've had examples sent to us where drivers have pulled over to take a nap, and they've worked for carriers. And again, I'm not saying it's all carriers. They're just unscrupulous carriers.
Right.
And they're like,
push them on down the line. Yeah.
They're messaging them on their Qualcomm thing or whatever, their little computer doohickey, or calling them and saying, hey, you need to get on down the road. You still got more hours, and you can run hours, and so maybe that'll take some of that away if a driver can. I mean, I joke all the time. I love my afternoon nap. When I used to truck, I would get loaded, unload,
we've seen you up there. We know.
Yeah,
we've seen you napping in your office, Lewie. You don't have to pretend. It's okay.
I need a sleeper up there. I keep telling Todd Spencer he needs to buy sleeping pods. Take a little afternoon nap.
I co-sign on that.
I can get on board with that.
I co-sign on that. Yeah. The idea there, it's just trust the professionals to make the right decision based on their operation. And as we've, no truck driver out there wants to drive unsafely. They want to get from A to B safely. They want to get home that evening or that weekend. It's putting the trust in the truck driver to make the right decision. That's what we're talking about.
I'm the first to admit, and I still do. It's funny because I still get that afternoon between about 1:30 and 3 o'clock really sleepy. And I like to pull over and take a nap for a little bit, and then you're wide awake because you catch yourself, kind of just not about having on. It's not that you're tired, you could have got to get rest, just your body. I mean, and there's studies that show your body needs a nap once in a
This is
while.
the most exciting part of this conversation for me, because now I think we've got you pushing for office nap time.
Office nap time.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd be all
Yeah,
for
let's
that.
do it. Let's start a petition. Let's
Of
do
course,
it.
that's unpaid.
Unpaid.
All right. Well, there's the catch. Yeah, exactly.
You have to mark that off duty.
All right. That's fine. I'll get my paper logs in order here.
Another thing they looked at, data queue reform, revisions to the process for drivers coming. Now, this is something OOIDA has been calling for years. What it's doing is not what it's supposed to be doing. What would you like to see there?
The third-party arbitrary board or something to that effect, which is kind of what they're talking about. And again, I think you said it earlier, but it's important to remember much of this stuff is still a work in progress, but this is what they're working toward. But, I mean, that's what we've kind of looked at as some sort of an arbitrary board, whether it's made up of trucking enforcement together and maybe a third party or something. But what happens, and in some states do a really good job, and I think it's Arizona does a really good job. They've got a third party, but some states, unfortunately, if you file data queue, it gets right back to the officer who wrote it or his supervisor. And
Yeah.
I mean,
How's that going to go?
Yeah, how's that gonna go? Yeah, I did a terrible job. You're right.
What's
truck
this guy
driver.
thinking? Oh, that was me. Whoops.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this has been a flawed process since it came into fruition, and it definitely needs changed. We as an association have been complaining and griping about it for a long time. So is CVSA, to their credit. CVSA would like it changed. ATA, I would say, as well. So pretty much everybody in trucking is unified on this. So probably other than the states who the enforcement officers get their own to check mark off. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely needs done. There needs to be a fair way to handle this because, unfortunately, we file a lot of these and we see what happens. And, I remember a cop and the head of enforcement saying this CVSA sometimes there's just not common sense on roadside. So that's why we need a common sense approach to fix it when someone's not using common sense.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty tall task. I mean, kind of going back and doing all this over and making sure it's done right. But again, these are first steps that I think are important to mention are being taken now. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. You mentioned complaining and griping. There is an official place, and you mentioned the National Consumer Complaint Database. There is an official place to file complaints and your gripes, that being the database itself. No secret here, it is not working. And part of this plan here is to make it work a little better. Looks like it's going to get an overhaul. This is something I think probably could go back to the drawing board and square one and kind of starting from there. The idea is they're going to look at this and figure out what's working and what isn't working. Yeah,
there's phase one, they've calling it, and we've met with them a few times about this, and we have complained ever since I've been at OOIDA since 2017. I've been complaining about it since then. One, the name is very tricky because what trucker thinks, I go to the National Consumer Complaint Database if
Yeah, the NCCDB.
And I think a lot of truckers don't even know that it exists.
Right.
I mean, I know that I didn't until I came in the office here at OOIDA,
but even if they do, they're calling it and they're not getting.
Yeah, but I was going to say
results.
this is where all problems go to die because truckers unfortunately submit issues and they never hear anything. We help submit them as well, so. They are supposed to be putting people to monitor these and look at these. I mean, I've told them, you will probably, if you would monitor this correctly and do this correctly, you'll get all kinds of data that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then the other thing they said they're going to do is add a much clearer way to report property broker issues, kind of fighting this fraud.
Right.
So that's going to be the first parts of phase one.
Yeah, which is a great place to start, I think, too.
Yep. Just monitoring, it's a great place.
Monitoring, yeah. Well, and you brought up brokering there. They did also mention in this initiative fighting unlawful double brokering, and we've talked about this before too. But this is a problem that's gotten much worse over the years here.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and truckers, I sometimes we get these terms confused because double brokering is legal if it's done correctly.
Right.
But both parties have brokerage authority. But what's happening is people are brokering a load, and then they, which that's not really double brokering, I guess. Double brokering is technically when somebody who has broker authority takes a load and they give it to a trucking company or somebody who doesn't have brokerage authority, and then that party tries to broker it. So we're swearing. And that's what, but with that and the fraud and everything that's going on out here, they are supposed to be committed to try to solve some of these issues. I think a good start, which is what I've told them, is make it much harder to get brokerage authority, make it much harder to get trucking authority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need to raise the barrier of
standards.
entry, and it's you buy some insurance, you post some bond or whatever, and boom, you're in business. It just doesn't seem like a really good business, really good idea of a way to put people in business.
Yeah, and we've seen the results of that. We've seen what's happened.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's why we're in the longest truck recession in history.
Yep, among many reasons, for sure.
One of the things we talked about on one of our shows last week was the rumor going around on the electronic logging device exemption for pre-2000 trucks. That got squashed in this announcement, right?
Yeah, they said that they have no plans. There was those little under the last administration, there was talk of doing away with that, not going away. But in this new administration, Secretary Duffy and President Trump have no taste for that. They don't want that to happen. I think they realize that most people who own older trucks have much more experience than others and get along fine. We're not seeing massive carnage from those folks. You could argue the fact that ELDs actually cause safety numbers to go the wrong way. There's plenty of proof of that. We'd probably be better off if we got rid of them altogether.
However, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
It's not going to happen right now.
Would take an act of Congress at this point.
Yes, and that's a good point, because we have gotten a little flack that we're happy about this and we're not talking about ELDs, like getting rid of them all in general, why we're giving them a pass. Remind folks, FMCSA did not mandate ELDs.
That was Congress.
It was Congress.
Yeah,
so,
which means it will take Congress to
we need a
it.
congressional act to reverse it. So Secretary Duffy can't do anything about that.
Right.
It's going to take Congress.
Right.
So, but what he can do at this point is can't allow for a rulemaking within the agency to on the 2020 or 2000 and older trucks. So,
right.
And that's what they're doing.
Yep, that's sticking around. Amid all of this, and we've got a couple more here things to cover that they covered there, but the DOT did say it's going to continue to go through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations Manual to take out unnecessary regulations that do not really impact safety. Some more to come on that front. And again, I think this is a work in progress as this administration kind of gets a feel for what works and what doesn't work. As they look at the manual, and, I think we were talking with you maybe a couple weeks ago about it being, bigger than the Bible. Yeah.
Did we get a word count on that yet, Ashley?
We haven't yet.
We're still crunching the numbers.
We're still crunching the numbers.
Yeah,
yeah we're looking
We're waiting
into
in anticipation.
We've got somebody in the office back there with a calculator, and they're furiously going about it. But the conversations you've been having with DOT, and again, OOIDA can take a lot of credit for what we saw late last week and what we're going to see over the coming weeks and months. But as they look at the manual there, is there anything in particular, I guess any advice that you would give them or anything you are telling them as they consider, again, taking stuff out and figuring out what works?
Yeah, they got to use common sense. Just like the way you're supposed to have your name on the door of your truck, leased or owned by, all that stuff. And I can't even, when I look at a book, tell you it's so crazy. But stupid stuff like that has nothing to do with safety.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff in that book. A couple years ago at CVSA, they finally did away with this catch-all rule. Because if nobody knew what to do with it, they threw it under this catch-all rule. And they finally got rid of that because they reminded everybody there, we're only supposed to talk about things that are intimate danger. That's what an out-of-service criteria is, intimate danger. Now, I'm sure there's people out there who argue that there's some stuff there that's probably not intimate.
Sure.
They're probably right.
Yeah.
But DOT needs to think about that as they're going through this process and they read these rules. Is this really a safety concern? What I'd like to see somewhere along the line is if on especially small stuff like lights and different stuff like that, if you can fix it at the time of stop. So you got a light out, a marker light.
Yeah.
Most guys carry lights or a headlight out. I mean, if you can stop, fix it while you're stopped right there. Why do you even get a violation for that? I mean, my last DOT violation I got was for a headlight out in broad daylight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm driving and I drove with my headlights on just so people could see me better and pass a highway or a DOT cop
That came
in
back to
Ohio.
bite you, didn't it?
Yeah, and he was seeing it and pulled me over, and that was his reason to inspect me, and that's all he got me for. And
Yeah.
I changed the headlight bulb while he had me pulled over, and I still got a violation for it. I mean, that's just stupid. It's just, let's use some common sense in these kind of rules.
We don't have a lot of time here, but again, it can take a while, but this is what years of fighting for truckers in D.C. looks like. Results are going to come with time and effort. A lot of issues to tackle out there, Lewie. We don't have a lot of time. But as we look at this list and you look at your list that you have in your mind that's swirling around, what are some other quick issues at the top of your wish list, I guess, right now for what you'd like to see get changed?
Well, what I'd really like to see is truckers to speak up. I'd like to get this Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act passed. I'd like to see the Got Truckers Act passed. And I'd like to see the Drive Act passed. There's three things right there I think would help so much and help in life. And you can do that easily at fightingfortruckers.com.
There you go. You plugged it again. Good job.
All right, Lewie, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me, and a special thanks to all the truckers out there. I hope you're happy about this, and if you are, join OOIDA. We're stronger together. And again, thank you, truckers, for what you do. This country would be nowhere if it wasn't for you.
Well said.
Coming up, we're speaking with our friends up north in celebration of Canada Day. We'll find out what it's like hauling on both sides of the border and what issues the Canadian Trucking Alliance are working on. Be sure to stay tuned to Trucking with OOIDA. Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. We're heading into our Canada Day coverage with Jeff Wood, the Senior Vice President of Policy with the Canadian Trucking Alliance. Jeff, how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having us on, and happy Canada Day to everybody.
Yes. I'm curious for our listeners who maybe aren't aware, what is the Canadian Trucking Alliance and what do you do?
So the Canadian Trucking Alliance is a federation of the provincial trucking associations. British Columbia Trucking Association, Alberta Motor Transport Association, Saskatchewan Trucking Association, Manitoba Trucking Association, Ontario Trucking Association, Quebec Trucking Association, and the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association. So a federal lobby group that focuses on national issues for trucking across the country, and the provincial associations make up our membership. So about let's call it 5,000 members. 5,000 companies. Trucking companies belong. They operate in excess of 120,000 heavy trucks and employ about 250,000 Canadians. Operate in every part of the country, and a substantial number of our members participate in cross-border operations and international commerce in the United States.
What are some of the issues you're focusing on at the moment?
So in the domestic context, our number one issue is the prevalence of the underground economy. So it's we've had a lack of enforcement, primarily from CRA, which is the Canada Revenue Agency, the Canadian equivalent of the IRS, and then our equivalent of the Department of Labor. So there's a host of non-compliance or lack of enforcement for the last 10 years that's caused a lot of challenges from a level playing field perspective. So it's gaining a little bit more attention now, but certainly we need a lot more enforcement from both those agencies, or both those organizations, to get us back on track. So it's been a challenge here, and we've been dealing with it for about a decade, and it's causing significant competitive imbalance issues in the industry.
This is the so-called Driver Inc. Issue. Is that right, Jeff?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. It's destroying our industry.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because looking from afar, it kind of makes sense as to what you're battling there. But can you talk specifically about how it's affecting individual truck drivers and motor carriers out there? and what that looks like, and I guess what a solution looks like too?
Sure. So there's it's actually a good question. So two angles. So it really boils down to, it's a financial issue. So if a trucking company, and it's primarily it's perpetrated by the ownership groups of trucking companies, and not everybody participates in this. I mean, we should be front and center that there's a significant number of carriers up here that follow the rules, that pay their drivers properly, that treat their drivers properly, but there's a growing percentage that don't. So from an ownership perspective, essentially you're absolving yourself of all the responsibility to pay overtime, employment benefits, all of the required employer sort of inputs for employee protection. So that comes off the books from the ownership group. The owners that participate in this, unfortunately, it's unfortunate they're participating in it, but from a financial perspective, they're putting about $30,000 per year per driver in their pocket. So it's fairly lucrative for them. Again, it pushes all the responsibility on, when you set up these contracts, or the drivers become contractors or driver inc. It's really employment misclassification. So they push all the responsibility onto the drivers. And in a number of cases, the drivers don't have the protections they need. So they don't have the health benefits. They don't have workers' compensation. So all of that goes away. Unfortunately, a lot of them are setting themselves up incorrectly as a personal services business, which if in proper terms, you would actually pay more tax from an income tax perspective. So the question is, why are all these drivers converting, and what does that mean? So revenue-wise or tax loss-wise from the ownership group, we've pegged that at least $1 billion that isn't going to government coffers. Wow. And a significantly larger portion of that we believe is from income tax evasion for drivers that participate in the scheme. From a competitive standpoint, obviously trucking is hyper competitive. You'll see that obviously in the U.S., but it's hyper competitive here too. High volume, low margin. When a non-compliant operator has the ability to lower their operating costs significantly, they gain market share. And that's a challenge. If enforcement were to take place from CRA's perspective or from ESDC, that levels the playing field. In terms of your question about what's one of the immediate solutions we feel that could happen or should happen, is the reinstatement of the requirement to issue a T4A. So a T4 goes to an employee in the Canadian tax system. A T4A is fees for services that would go to a contractor. So unfortunately, in our space, there's been a moratorium on the enforcement of the issuance of T4As. You bring that back, it brings the paper trail back. So we've been, for your listeners, I know there's obviously a lot of them in Canada, but in the U.S. context, that's the equivalent of what we understand to be a 1099 or an IRS 1099. That's well under control in the U.S. And again, from an enforcement standpoint, IRS enforces the law, and you have significantly high rates of compliance. We don't have that same luxury in Canada. We've been asking CRA to bring this back for over a decade, and again, we've been fighting tooth and nail to try to have this happen, and it just seems to be a huge challenge that we're making some progress, but not nearly enough to protect those workers and to protect the fleets that are following the rules.
Yeah. I was curious, how closely do you guys follow what's going on with trucking in the U.S.?
Very close. So I think from your membership's perspective or your organization's perspective, we do have connections through OOIDA. You have some reps. I think they're still board reps, but that we communicate with on a regular basis here. Also in touch with the American Trucking Association's truckload carriers. So we're following it. We follow what happens in the U.S. very closely. As we all know, our economy is tied at the hip to the U.S. economy, and our carriers participate in international commerce significantly. So it's important. We keep an eye on it. We like a lot of what we're seeing in terms of, sort of from a law and order perspective and supports for the industry. So following that very closely, and hoping some of that can transpire up or, come into our space, which again, we're working on a host of things that are somewhat similar to what you've seen in a number of the executive orders or some of the supports that are coming out. So we're, again, to answer your question, we follow extremely closely.
Yeah, I was curious. Last week, the White House and USDOT announced a number of initiatives to help the trucking industry over here. Things like truck parking, saying goodbye to speed limiters, hours of service flexibility, just to name a few. When you hear movement on things like this, is that encouraging? And are those things that are, major issues over there like they are here?
So the two that would come to mind immediately is the support for more truck parking, or what we call them rest areas. So we have we talked earlier about the interprovincial trade barrier. So we've actually flagged that for our governments here that there needs to be a significant attention paid to increasing truck parking availability, particularly along what we call our national highway system, which is just it's a designation of key highways that connect provinces and territories. So that's been flagged by our membership as something that needs attention, and we feel there seems to be a lot of willingness or a lot of interest from our governments, both federal and provincial, to really look at that. It's about the national highway system is to support our freight system and our drivers, and the standards for truck parking and stuff are lacking in a host of areas. So we're encouraged to see the supports that obviously are happening in the U.S., and we're also encouraged to see or to start participating in those discussions here north of the border. I'm not familiar exactly with some of the flexibility talked about with the hours of service in the U.S., but we are starting to embark on some preliminary discussions with respect to our hours of service rules to see where we can sort of look at some detailed parts of it to figure out if we can make the rules a little bit more flexible for drivers, give them a little bit more opportunity for rest, and just add some efficiency to their day. So again, those are very preliminary. Nothing sort of been formulated, but it is on our radar screen, and we do have direction from our board to start exploring that. And it starts with looking at where benefits to drivers could come from an efficiency standpoint, or making them more productive and allowing them more time to rest, and also just making it a little bit easier on them to during their day. Yeah. So those are the two I think that come to mind, sort of with respect to what you just talked about. I think some of the other things we're encouraged by in the executive orders is just the sort of the focus on law and order, and we talked about the Driver Inc. piece earlier. So that's the financial piece in our world, but it does actually have a translation into road safety. Obviously, road safety is important. Compliant fleets and compliant drivers understand that, but unfortunately, there's a correlation to Driver Inc. and road safety, and that's something we need to really wrap our heads around here. With respect to what we're doing on that front, is we're actually into a wholesale review of some of our national safety code standards that look at the differences between truck safety systems and between jurisdictions. A little bit different here in Canada versus the U.S. I mean, FMCSA has a lot of control. You have one system that provides the same measurement levels for everybody across the board. We have different systems here that are supposed to follow the same mechanisms or the same protocols, but they over the years have deviated, and we need to get a handle back on that and allow the provinces and territories to do their job with respect to truck safety and enforcement, but also ensuring that the work that they're doing, the data they're sharing, the metrics or the algorithms they're using to measure safety performance are consistent and they produce the same result.
For sure. Jeff, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was Jeff Wood with the Canadian Trucking Alliance. A good chat with him.
Always good to catch up with our friends from the north, including yourself, Ashley.
Thank you.
But yeah, and we're actually going to speak here in just a moment with Joanne Couture. He mentioned the OOIDA board member connection. She's going to be up next, and looking forward to that talk as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back with that on Trucking with OOIDA right after this.
Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. We're going to head across the border now to Joanne Couture, an OOIDA board member and trucker who hauls in both the U.S. and Canada. Joanne, thanks so much for coming on, and happy Canada Day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And happy Canada Day to a former Canadian resident, to you, Ashley.
Yes.
Always, once a Canadian, always a Canadian.
Once a Canadian,
right?
always a Canadian. I'd say I'm dual. I'm dual citizen now. I am curious, Joanne. I've found over here, when July 4th comes, Americans will ask me, does Canada have a birthday? Do you guys do anything like the 4th? Have you gotten that question before?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I get that question probably as regularly as you do. And yes, our birthday is today, July 1st. And I was, I guess, privileged enough to grow up in the nation's capital. So I got like the bulk of the celebrations over the years growing up in the capital and being up on Parliament Hill and the fireworks and all the musical events and all the politicians and everybody, a whole lot of people congregating downtown on Parliament Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a dumb question as the American in the room here?
Go ahead.
So
Scott.
thank you. In America we've got you mentioned the fireworks. We got the fireworks. We got the barbecuing out and all that kind of stuff. What is kind of the, I guess, typical celebration for Canada Day?
I would say, from my perspective. Oh, sorry. You go ahead, Joanne.
Well, I was going to probably say the same thing you were going to say. It's somewhat similar. The barbecues, the family get-togethers, the hanging out at the cottage, swimming in the lake, and those of us that grew up in the nation's capital going on Parliament Hill and topping off the evening with the fireworks.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say living in Missouri especially, there's a heck of a lot more fireworks here.
Yes, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, for about 2 weeks. Yeah, we've got them going off.
That would be the biggest difference.
Okay.
But Joanna, I want to talk about your career. Now, you truck both in Canada and the U.S. Talk to me about what you haul and how long you've been doing it on both sides of the border.
So 31 years is what I'm going on. All of it has been cross-border. My very first trip in a truck was across the U.S. border down to Newport News, Virginia. So I remember that one. I presently haul liquid chemicals, so I haul a tank all over the U.S., all 48 states, all 10 provinces. We go all over the place. I've been doing that for about 17 years. Prior to that, I did van work and reefer work. There again, that was all over all 48 states, all 10 provinces. And I have been part of OOIDA part of the board for OOIDA since 2012. I'm also on the board of directors for the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada since 2016. So that pretty much encompasses everything I do professionally.
How did that come about? Like, how did you first hear about OOIDA and what kind of made you want to get involved?
I had, back in 1998, first truck I ever owned, had a mechanical issue, got taken for a ride literally by a towing company, and I happened to be discussing that situation with a couple other drivers the next day once I got the truck fixed and back on the road, and I was one of the drivers suggested you should talk to OOIDA and maybe they can fix that for you or make an official complaint or something. And it took me a few years to actually join, to become a member. But that whole thought process I researched and found out more and realized that this is an organization that even though I'm Canadian, this is an organization that does advocacy work for both sides of the border. And seeing as when I'm in the U.S., I need to follow all U.S. regulations, well, it's good for me to be informed about the U.S. regulations. And the Landline magazine, that this is back before being able to do as much research on the Google machine, but Landline provided a whole lot of information for all the new regulations and everything coming up.
How do you keep it all straight? Do you find things are similar in both countries, or like how do you keep it all straight?
You got to have two ways of thinking. So a lot of it is similar as far as safety regulations. Everything's like pre-trips and all of that, and the equipment. Seeing as we have no OEM manufacturers in Canada. All of our trucks come from their U.S. OEMs. So the equipment's the same. There's very minimal, like my speedometers in kilometers instead of miles. So I got to constantly, convert that in my head. Same with our speed limits. Everything up here in Canada is metric versus the imperial system in the U.S. So you do more conversion that way, but you get used to that over the years. As far as the regulations, we have slight variations in our hours of service. We can drive 13 hours. And the way the 13 hours came about is they actually used common sense and used locations where freight moves a lot. So just for an example, the Toronto-Montreal corridor, you can take traffic out of the equation because these rules were made years ago when traffic was a whole lot less. This doesn't really work now with the traffic there is. But if you take traffic out of the equation, you can go from Toronto to Montreal, drop switch, back to Toronto in a 13-hour driving shift. So that's where the 13-hour regulation as far as drive time came about. There's other locations throughout Canada, but that's just one example. But they use common sense to make those rules. Whereas the U.S., there's so many bigger cities in the U.S. that they couldn't have really used that kind of model to make the U.S. regulations. So it's not a comparison of one to the other. It's just that's the way the Canadian regulators did it at the time.
Joanne, you're talking regulations, which, isn't the most probably fun thing to think about, I would imagine. But the way I look at what you're doing is I feel like you probably get the best of both worlds as well, being able to truck in Canada and truck in the United States. What do you like most about being able to kind of, I guess, experience both systems out there?
Canada has, in general, less traffic. So we're only 10% of your population. So that's just a whole lot less people to be on the roads, except for Toronto. Toronto is just an odd statistic. Toronto is the third worst city for traffic in the world, behind London, and I believe Tokyo was the second.
I would not have guessed that.
It totally is atrocious.
Nightmare.
There's too many people per square inch as far as compared to the road system. Now, as far as what I prefer in the U.S., your interstate system is amazing. It's fantastic. It's great. It's well designed, well laid out. There is a rest area, roughly. There's somewhere to go to the bathroom every hour on the hour, roughly. Whereas in Canada, the Trans-Canada Highway, which is the one and only highway that goes across the country in northern Ontario, is a 2-lane road, and the nearest bathroom is 4 hours away.
Ouch.
So, yes, there again, it boils down to we have 10% of your population.
Yeah. So
our politicians haven't invested as much as yours did way back when they created the interstate system. So that's one of the differences. So you learn to plan your potty stop.
I'm sure you do.
If you need to or not. Yeah.
A lot, some of the issues like truck parking, speed limiters, driverless trucks are things, we're focused on over here. Are those issues over there, or do you find the issues are different?
Driverless trucks is kind of low on the radar. Truck parking is high on the radar. That same, 4 hours for potty stops in Northern Ontario, it's the same thing for truck parking as far as that goes. Our truck parking situation is the same or worse, taking into account, difference in population, but still, we still need as many parking spots up here for the trucks that we've got. And sorry, I forget what the third one was.
Speed limiters.
Oh, speed limiters. Oh, yes, speed limiters. Yes, I shouldn't forget that one. So my truck is equipped with a speed limiter because I live in Ontario. My truck's base plated in Ontario, and anybody who comes into the province of Ontario and or Quebec and or BC must have a speed limiter on their trucks. So that means and when I say anybody, that it's the same as when I go to the U.S. The rules apply. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So a U.S. carrier coming in Ontario, Quebec, or BC must have their truck equipped with a speed limiter set at 105 kilometers an hour, which is somewhat equivalent to 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And we live with it. And we have elephant races down the 401, which is our major highway.
Yeah.
And by elephant races, I mean, it takes 10 minutes to pass another truck that's doing half a kilometer an hour. But because you've been frustrated at being behind this particular truck for, half an hour, and every hill, the weight difference slows you. Anyways, it's a frustrating way of driving. And every time I cross the border and get into a situation where it's not everybody set at the same speed, that there's carriers that set their trucks for fuel economy reasons at a speed limited particular setting, but it's not everybody. So when you get in the U.S., I feel people are more patient, people are more willing. Up here, the four-wheelers won't let you out because they go, "Oh no, you're going to sit in front of me for the next 20 minutes trying to pass the truck beside you."
That makes sense.
So the elephant races are not pleasant.
Can I ask you one quick question here, Joanna? We've got about a minute left, but when you come into our area, Green Valley, you sometimes will bring a treat from Canada. You had some ketchup-flavored potato chips one day.
Which I can't believe the U.S. doesn't have.
Which we don't have here, and I
crazy.
think I ate more than my fair share of that bag, I will readily admit. Is there anything from the U.S. that you are routinely bringing back across the border where you're like, I got to get my hands on this and bring it to my friends and family?
Actually, there's a caramel cappuccino flavored M&Ms that we don't have up here.
Okay.
So there's a few things, but yes, you're right. I do bring down treats for my friends in Green Valley for ketchup chips.
I love those
all-dressed
ketchup chips.
Those
are so good. We do have the all-dressed chips now.
They are hard to find, though.
We have them here now, yeah.
But I wouldn't even say they're that.
No, they're not similar or not up to par?
No.
Okay, well, the ketchup chips, we should get those here.
I don't understand how we don't
I don't know why we
those.
don't either, but hey, maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
We have Better Craft Dinner.
Yep.
And we have Shreddies, and we have Coffee Crisp.
Yep.
And we have, the most important, we have Tim Hortons.
Oh, yes. I have been to Tim Hortons.
Do you know what Kraft Dinner is, Scott?
I do not. Is it like a Kraft, like the macaroni and cheese kind of stuff?
Mac and cheese, but it is better.
It's different. Okay, different. All right,
definitely
good.
better.
There you go.
Well, Joanne, I could sit and talk to you about Canadian cuisine for a long time, but unfortunately we are out of time. But I do very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me here on this Canada Day, and I wish you all, my American friends, happy 4th of July.
We've got to take a short break, but we'll be back with Trucking with OOIDA right after this.
Our thanks again to Joanne Couture, OOIDA board member for her time, Jeff Wood as well from the Canadian Trucking Alliance, and of course Lewie Pugh, our returning champion for his time as well. We are going to be talking about that FMCSA 9 initiative thing again later on this week, so much more on that to come. Ashley?
Yes, thank you so much for listening. Happy Canada Day
Happy
for
Canada
our
Day.
Canadian listeners, and hope you drive safe.
Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message, or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.